the coaches here in Australia. And a couple of you now have started sending in your questions, and I'm going to use them as the coaching tips that I always endeavour to bring into every podcast. So I'm only going to use the first names of the people who sent, because I didn't ask them for the permission to use their names. So James on Facebook messaged me and said, does a Division 1 and Division 2 team training together, coached primarily by the Division 1 coach, ever work? And James adds, it always seems the Division 1 coach gets, and the Division 1 team gets the best of everything, while Division 2 players get left behind and the Division 2 coach gets overlooked. Well, your question was, does it ever work? James, sometimes that works for the Division 1 coach and nothing else. But what I will say is, if that Division 1 coach is smart, what he will do at the start of his pre-season is give at least a month for everybody, whether they are Division 2, Division 1, give everybody the chance to improve together. And that includes coaches, and make them all one team. Because what invariably will happen, James, is during the year, some of the Division 1 players will be unavailable through injury, suspension, or unavailability, and he'll need some of those Division 2 players. I'm assuming it's a he, right? So, yes, it does work, what you've just described, but for the Division 1 coach, not for the Division 2, they tend to get left behind. A smart Division 1 coach, and this can apply to any situation, first grade, reserve grade, in a community setting, will probably get them all training together at least one day a week on a Tuesday, for example, for maybe 8 weeks, giving the feeling of one club and that there's fluidity between the two teams and giving every kid a chance or every player a chance. But you've got to break up at times to prepare your team. So the coaching tip there is to try and balance that when you've got a couple of teams, because you need everybody in your club, boys and girls. You can't ostracize anyone, and you shouldn't pigeonhole anyone as Division 2, because this ties into the next question, which was from Sam. Again, I'm not going to use his surname because I didn't ask him permission. And he says, could you do a podcast on why some of the best junior rugby league players don't kick on and make first grade? Primarily Australian schoolboys, yet players that don't make those junior rep sides can have substantial careers and win premierships. And he used the example of Brent Sherwin. Well, I can give you some others. Cameron Smith, Cooper Cronk, Billy Slater. So many. I want to link the two questions first. So imagine you're the Division 1 coach and you're ostracising that Division 2 group. Is there a Brent Sherwin, a Cooper Cronk, a Billy Slater, etc. in that Division 2 team that you're ignoring? You'd be silly, wouldn't you? James Tedesco, I know for a fact he played in a lot of B teams. He could be languishing in your B team now, guys, and you're ignoring him. Secondly, is there a reason that players don't kick on and make first grade? Well, yes, because if you look at the previous question about the Division 1 coach, whoever it is, I don't know where they are, but some players get preferential treatment and get all the help, probably because they're a bit bigger, a bit more athletically developed, a bit more developed as a human and as an athlete, and they get all the trappings, and the smaller ones get ignored. And those smaller ones, or the less developed ones, if they've still got the fire in the belly and they keep wanting to practice and they're not disheartened, will train harder and work harder and think harder and prepare harder. So that's one of the reasons that players don't kick on. The second reason is we all develop differently. Third reason is at different times and at different clubs, particularly in the NRL, they have different focuses. So I'll use Manly as an example. When I was at Manly, they didn't recruit hard for the under-16s, but they recruited reasonably hard for the 18s and very hard for the 20s. I think it was 20 years later, they recruited hard for everything, 16s, 18s, and 20s. Now, if you think about that, that can absolutely change the way that players in every circumstance are looked at. If you've got to try and get your best team on the park at 16s, if that's your club philosophy, then there's going to be some players who get looked at more than they would if you didn't. And so that third thing is that different clubs have different focuses. And also with the NYC not being there anymore, some clubs have got a different approach to recruiting players. And that's why some kick on and some don't. And a lot of it, the fourth reason, comes down to coaching. Sometimes players don't get the coaching they need and they'll never kick on. Sometimes the best players don't get the coaching they need and they don't kick on. Sometimes the average players or the late developers do get the coaching they need and they kick on later. So there's 4 things I think there, Sam. Any of you can contact me. I've given you all the details already, but I'll do them again. admin@rugbyleaguecoach.com.au is the email. Rugby League Coach on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. RL Coach on the net. Oh, and Rugby League Coach on TikTok. I always forget, don't I?